Okay, we're back in Luke chapter 8. Last time we got up to 33, I believe, about halfway through the casting out of the legion of demons among the man of the Gerasenes. Let's go back to that story again, do a quick review. Maybe we'll just read it first, 26 to 33, and then we'll kind of make a few points, and then we'll pick up where we left off. So, Elizabeth, would you read that for us, 26 to 33 of Luke chapter 8?
Then they sailed to the country of the Gennesaeans, which is opposite Galilee. When Jesus had stepped out on land, there met him a man from the city who had demons. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he had not lived in a home, but among the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him and said with a loud voice, What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me. For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many a time he had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles. But he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the desert. Jesus then asked him, What is your name? And he said, Legion. For many demons had entered him, and they begged him not to command them to depart into the abyss. Now a large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him to let him into these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned.
Okay, great. So let's start with I'm going to call this the wretched condition of this man. And what are some things that we're told about him? First, where is this happening? Where is it taking place?
In the Decapolis, the east side of the of the Sea of Galilee, which is a pagan side.
Yeah, yeah.
Gentile.
He calls it the country of the Gerasenes, and that would be on the east of Galilee, which is, and the most important part is, as you can see from the whole thing, this is pagan territory. It's also not just what part of the pagan territory, where is it happening when he steps onto the land? He meets this man, and has he been dwelling?
Tombs.
The tombs.
Yes, he's homeless, not lived in a house, living among the tombs. He had demons, and was anything else? He was kept bound with shackles and chains later on. Chains and shackles. And I think they say he was naked.
Yes, wore no clothes.
Yeah. Naked. Just as wretched as you get. He's just where he is, his whole condition, and this legion of demons is dealing with him. So that's the setup, and Jesus crosses the lake, goes through the storm with his disciples, and brings them to this. This is what's interesting is, as soon as he finishes with this guy, he's going to leave, as if this is the only reason he came, to see this man, to deal with this issue. So, but in that scene, you're getting a scene of the power, and we'll call it the power and the love of Christ in this scene here. So first thing, let's talk about his power. What happens when the man sees Jesus, or when the demons, in a sense, see Jesus through the man? What do? What's their response to him? Verse 28.
Fear.
Yeah. Yeah. The demons cry out and fall down before him in great fear. What have you to do with me? They're begging him, don't torment me. And he had commanded the unclean spirit to get out of him. And then Jesus commands the name, and the name of the demon is
Legion.
Legion, which means what is legion?
Well, it's a large
Mm,
large
Right.
company of soldiers normally.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's hundreds, maybe thousands of soldiers. As a Roman legion. I think it's thousands of Roman soldiers. And so this is the pictures, like we're dealing with not just one demon here, but thousands of them. But thing you notice is that he commands the demons and they obey him. They beg him and he gives them sort of what they're begging him for, but he commands them. Jesus commands the army of demons. That's remarkable. He doesn't pray, God cast them out. He simply commands them and tells them, go, and they obey. And they must obey, even though they don't want to. So the demons come out of the man, they enter the pigs, and they rush down the steep bank into the lake and are drowned.
2,000 of them.
What's that?
Mark says it's 2,000 of them.
Yeah, Mark's account is 2,000 pigs. So
That's incredible.
thousands of pigs rush down and drown. Now, here's a question. Why do you think Christ would do this? Would have them, why not just cast them out? Why the whole thing with the pigs? Any thoughts on that? Why would he endeavor to grant such a strange request?
It's a good place for them, given they are unclean demons.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is the pigs why pigs? Well, they are unclean. Unclean animals. And I think another thing part about it too is in all these stories, like the last one we saw with Jesus calming the storm, it's a display of his power over these untamed elements, these things that you cannot see. So the storm, when he commands the storm, you can see the storm cease, and you can see the disciples marvel, who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him? They're seeing visible, untamed elements of nature being commanded by Christ. But now in this story, I think personally why he goes with the pigs is he's dealing with invisible, untamed spiritual elements that you can see the man, but you can't see the demons. And so when you see the thousands of pigs rushing down all of a sudden at the command of Jesus, exactly when Jesus says go, they go and the pigs rush down, and you've had that whole interaction. It's giving sight to that which is invisible. You can see. It's almost like you're looking out at the outside, and the trees are moving, and I say I can see the wind. I can't see the wind. I can see the trees moving, and from their movement, I know the wind is blowing, but I can't see the wind itself. And I think it's kind of like this. These pigs are allowing us to see the invisible, that his power over the heavenly realms and the spiritual elements is just as great, and they can testify to it. And when you see him saying go, and then thousands of pigs storm down a cliff into the sea, it's like something big has happened there, and it's not, you can't explain it away in some other ways as some might do. All right, so let's pick it up from here. That's where we left off last time. Let me click this here. And we'll pick up verse now 34 down to 39. Rob Ray, you want to get that for us?
When the herdsmen saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then people went out to see what had happened, and they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it told them about the demon-possessed man who had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." And he went away, proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him.
Yeah, this is great. All right, so now we get to the response to Christ. We'll start with the herdsman. What's the herdsman's response? The pig herdsman.
Leave us.
Yeah, well, before that, the herdsman for the pigs, when they see what happened, what do?
Where they get a synopsis of what happened from the people.
Yeah, so the herdsmen so they witnessed, they were eyewitnesses to what happened. They saw this whole things transpire here. And they immediately, it says they fled and they told the city and in the
Whole
country.
city. Yeah.
Okay, so they fled and told in the city and in the country. The people then came to see what happened. And what do they see?
The man who had been possessed sitting there calmly, speaking with Christ. He's sitting at Christ's feet.
Yeah, they see the man whom they could not control sitting at Jesus' feet.
And he's clothed. That's big.
Yes, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Then those who had seen it told them how the demon-possessed man had been healed. Then they hear the story of his healing. And what is their response then? Verse 37. Very interesting. So they didn't see it happen. They heard the story. They saw him sitting there. But just upon hearing the story, verse 37, all these people from the surrounding country do what?
Ask him to leave.
Yeah. They ask Christ to leave. Why? And it says very clearly,
Great fear.
they were seized with great fear. So that's been a theme in these last couple stories. If you remember, it's exactly how the story about with the disciples in the boat, when the storm comes and they are filled, they marvel, they were afraid and they marveled. It's a story of great fear, fear of the storm, followed by a greater fear of Christ. Who is this that commands the wind and the waves? And now we have another story similar to that, the fear of a man. You can imagine the villagers would have been afraid of this guy. They couldn't contain him. They couldn't bind him. And he's filled with demons, but now a greater fear of the one who can overcome this. So they feel this great fear, seized with it, and they beg Christ to leave them, which is exactly, if you remember, how Peter responded to Christ when he first calls him. If you remember that back, I think in chapter 4, where he says, after he teaches from Peter's boat, he sends him out to the lake and says, "Cast your net down." And Peter says, "We've been fishing all night, nothing's come up." And he says, "Try the other side." He puts the other side and it's filled with fish. And Peter says, "Depart from me, I'm a sinful man," as he realizes this is the Lord. He's in the presence of the Holy One. And I think that's what did the demon call Jesus? Son of the Most High God. Okay, yeah. All right. Of these stories so far, there's only one person who's not afraid of Christ. you saw who that was.
The guy who got healed, the guy who the demons left.
The one person not afraid of Christ is the man from whom the demons had gone. And he begs, everyone's begging Christ, if you notice that. The demons are begging him, please send us into the pigs. The people are begging him, please depart from us. And now, but this man is begging Christ for what? He begs.
To go with him.
Yeah. To go with him. He can be one of his disciples. But at this point, he can't, because again, he's a Gentile. This is not the time for him just yet. And then he might be with him, and Jesus instead sends him away and gives him some clear instructions here. So when he sends him away, what does he tell him? He tells him a few things to do. Verse 39, as we finish up that passage.
Tell everyone.
Yeah. Don't come with me. Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. And that's exactly what the man does. He spreads the word throughout the whole city. In a sense, he sort of becomes the first apostle to the Gentiles, if you will. He brings the message to all that region. And later on, I think Matthew made a point of that in one of his sermons, that later on there was this, Christ will come back to this area and there'll be a great reception for him because of this man's testimony. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So, but I really like this story a lot, and just the one of the things that really struck me about Christ is that he leaves there and he returns from there. So he goes on this journey really just for this one man. It's like a shepherd looking for his lost sheep. It was Christ who put the disciples, made them get into the boat and cross the other side to go through the storm, to go to the other side of the lake, where they would never go. That's a place the disciples would not go to. That's unclean. That's a place, and he said, "No, we're going there." And he goes there, and as far as we can see, his only purpose is to encounter this one man, to set this one man free, to proclaim his name to just the one man, who will then go forward and spread the word. But it's really a tender story when you think he goes out of his way for just the most wretched of men, the most pathetic and hopeless, as you can imagine. And he goes out of his way for that one man. And now all things change from that point. So I've been reading, I'm listening to, again, the Les Miserables story, right? And there's one scene here where, in the book, that's not in the movies, where Jean Valjean, he is the convict who becomes the mayor of the town, if you remember how the story goes, and he is, no one knows who he is, where he comes from, and there's one scene where he saves a man's life who's being crushed by a cart that fell upon him, and no one can lift it, but Jean Valjean is super strong, and so he gets under and he saves the man's life, and then he sets him up to help him out because he can't work anymore. So he gets him a job in a convent where he can do some gardening, and is very kind to the man. And then later on in the story, it's exposed that Jean Valjean is not the mayor they thought he was, that he was an ex-convict, and everybody now in the town hates him and is afraid of him, except one man, the guy that he saved. And he still loves him and will do anything for him. He even says at one point when Jean Valjean is looking for a favor, he says, could this man be a thief? I'd still help him. If he was a murderer, I'd still help him. He's just like, I don't care. It's like, I owe him my life. And, there's something really personal about that. It's really powerful. And you can kind of see that where everyone is is terrified of Christ, but this man's experienced his power for him and in saving his own life and experiencing that grace of God, the forgiveness, the wretch like me, the amazing grace, and how that makes him so devoted that he begs to go with Christ. If I can go with you, I'll leave everything behind. I don't know how much he has, but he apparently has a home that he can go to. But he's ready to leave it all for Christ's sake.
That is exactly how we've talked about this in other Bible studies, but in Deuteronomy 15, when it describes what a bondservant is, that's exactly what happened. The master frees the slave. The slave is so overwhelmed that he insists on staying. And so they would bang a peg in his ear. And he would become a bondservant, one who is voluntarily staying with his master. That's our story.
Yeah.
And that's where this guy wants to go.
Yeah. And the other one is like another story similar to that is Mary Magdalene, where remember Jesus freed her from like 7 demons. And you can see her faithfulness to him to the end. There's something about that of those that are just, you cannot tear them apart from Christ, are those who've experienced his grace. Not just seen his power and wonder and are impressed by his ministry, but who personally experienced the forgiveness, personally experienced that restoration, that salvation. And then you're like, how could I ever turn against him? How could I ever deny him at that point? You're just so overtaken by it. Yeah. So, all right. Let's pick up our next section here. Bob Fowler, you want to get the next story, verses 40 to 42?
Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler in the synagogue, and falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying.
Okay. All right, now he returns to the other side after setting this man free, and he's now welcomed. Jesus returns, welcomed by a crowd, and what happens next? Someone comes up to him with a problem. Who is it, and what's the problem?
Jairus.
Yeah. So Jairus is the man, and Jairus is we're told in this story here. Who is he?
A ruler of the synagogue.
Okay, he's a ruler of the synagogue, so he's a man of some renown,
Importance. Yeah.
importance. Yeah. And what does he do when he sees Jesus?
He's
Falls
begging
at
Jesus to
Jesus'
come to his
feet.
house.
Yeah, falls at Jesus' feet and basically implores him, begs him
To come to his home.
to come to his house. Why?
His 12-year-old daughter is dying.
Yeah. So his 12-year-old daughter, and he makes a point of she's 12 years old, 12-year-old daughter is dying. Again, this seems to be everybody's falling at Jesus' feet and begging him. If you may have noticed that. That seems to be the theme lately here. These all the man with the demons coming before him, whether it's the Gentile or the demons, the most wild and crazy of men that you can imagine falling down, and the demons begging Jesus to not torment them. And then we have another scene on the other spectrum here. We have a most respectable of men, a ruler of the synagogue, also falling at Jesus' feet, begging him to come to his house to help him because his 12-year-old daughter was dying. So let's see what happens next here. So the next scene here, Elizabeth, would you be able to read that for us? This would be the next paragraph, 42 down to 48.
As Jesus, excuse me, as Jesus went, the people pressed around him, and there was a woman who had had a discharge of blood for 12 years, And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately the discharge of blood ceased. And Jesus said, "Who is it that touched me?" And all denied it. When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you and are pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling, and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace."
Okay. So here we have, first we had Jairus is calling Jesus to come and help his daughter. And so Jesus goes now, and all the people pressing around him. And now we have this woman. And what are we told about the woman? Give us
She's
an-
hemorrhaging. She's hemorrhaging. Yes.
Okay, yeah, she is, has a discharge of blood. And how long has this been going on for her?
12 years.
12 years. Now you may have noticed, wait a minute, that number 12 comes up again here. 12 years for her. And what else do we know about her?
Well, she must have some faith. She wants to go over and touch his garment.
Yeah, before we get to her faith, though, there's a couple things about her in verse 43. She's
Well,
had a discharge of blood for 12 years.
she spent all that she had on physicians trying to be healed.
Yeah, spent all her living on doctors. Could not be healed by anyone. So for the last 12 years, she's been dealing with this, and she's it sounds like she's probably would have had to been a woman of some means to be able to spend. Most of the people that Jesus heals, there's no mention of doctors for them. But this woman has been spending money on doctors and quite a bit of money, apparently all of her living on doctors, and no one could heal her. So because of her misery, she has become poor. Again, it's similar to Jairus. It's like he is the ruler who becomes a beggar. And here is this probably a wealthy woman who becomes a pauper because of her misery, because of her disease, whatever it is that's causing this. What did I lose here? Okay. So let's pick it up from this. So he says, so could not heal her. And then we're told some things about her. He's going to say this is her faith, the faith of this woman. What does she do? Again, you notice in the story, he calls her out and says, "Your faith has made you well." Whenever you hear Jesus commend someone for their faith, we have to pay attention to the details about what is it that they did. What was it about her that displayed her faith for us so we can learn? What does she do that shows her faith?
Well, she touches his garment, the hem of his garment.
Yeah. Okay. She came up and touched the fringe of his garment. So remember, the crowd is all over him, and she makes every effort to get through the crowd, to get to him, to touch him. If I could just touch his garment. And she's healed. I think that's all that's said about it. Well, that's the first part. She came up and touched the fringe of his garment. Jesus responds to that. That's interesting. When she touches him, you can see what he does. What's Jesus' response to that action?
Who touched me?
Yeah, he stops. Who was that touched me? Everyone denies it, and Peter says, "The crowd surround you, and you're pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." And now the response of the woman. So Jesus stops and calls out um, for the woman to come clean, basically. And what does she do? In verse 47, I think this is really important.
She comes trembling and falling down before him and declared in all the presence of people that she had touched him.
Yeah, she comes trembling, falling down before him. Everyone's falling down before Christ. And so, and trembling before him. It's really these scenes, one after the other. He comes trembling before him, and declaring before everyone, of all the people, why she touched him and how she had been immediately here. Declaring why she touched him. Why did she touch him? I don't think Luke says it, but Matthew.
And Mark, I'm looking at it right now. Mark 5 also says it. It says, for she thought, if I just touch his garments, I will get well.
Yeah.
So it's a calculated move on her part. It's not just, whatever.
It wasn't an accident. She was trying to touch him. She believed she would get well if she could just touch him. And immediately healed. And so she comes declaring, she comes falling before him, as scared as she is. And then the Lord says to her, Christ to her,
Daughter, your faith has healed you.
yeah.
I haven't looking at a note hidden. I suppose it's true. I'm sure it is. But this is the only time in the New Testament that he refers to a woman as daughter. I don't know what the significance of that is, but.
Oh, I think it's very significant. Because she's family to him now. It's like there's this, it's a very tender thing to say to someone. This woman is probably, well, I don't know how old she'd be. She's probably older than him. She's been dealing with this issue for 12 years, using all her life savings on it. So, but that she is, remember that question? I think it connects to what we saw before. Who is my mother and my brothers, about the who is Jesus family.
Right.
And here we have my mother, my brothers are those who hear the word of God and do it. She is family, I think, to Christ. She is.
Just before you go on, a thought came into my mind. We call Matthew, Mark, and Luke the synoptic gospels, in that they provide a synopsis when taken together. And it's so good, I think, sometimes, as we just did, to look at your little cross-reference notes in the thing and read the story in the other two gospels, because they give pieces of information that we don't necessarily get in all of them. It's Matthew and Mark both say she thought to herself, if I could just touch his garment. Luke just says she walked over and touched his garment.
Yeah.
I think the fact that she thought about it adds something to the story.
Yeah, that's an important detail for Matthew and Mark. Luke doesn't feel the need to mention it, but yeah, it's emphasizing those. And yeah, it's really, it's interesting. I think with Luke, he tends to give more details focusing on Christ than on the individuals. Some of the interactions are a little sparser on details about the people that are being healed, but the focus is maybe, I'm just speculating that maybe he wants our focus to be really on Christ in this stories about. I'm not sure, but it is interesting. But he says to her, what a beautiful thing to say to daughter, to call her that. Because it first comes out like he's going to be like he's upset with her, like he's going to put her on trial and chastise her for daring to touch. How dare you touch the king like this? And instead, it's rewarded with daughter, and even that comment, your faith has made you well. Calling, just affirming her faith. She has faith, and then giving her to go in peace. That all is well. Just a great story. A couple things. You can notice some connections here between these two stories. These stories are always put together, kind of sandwiched. We're going to come back to Jairus' daughter in a moment. But initially, you can see some of the similarities in these two stories of the Jairus and his daughter and this woman. So, for example, there is a number assigned and a name that is a name mentioned for both of them in these stories. The focus of Jairus' story is on, well, as we mentioned, his daughter, and whose daughter is 12 years old. In this story here, we have another daughter who's also, we don't know her age, but we are given a number, 12 again. So, what does it mean? What is that significance of that?
I mean, from a numerology standpoint,
From your numerology standpoint here, what's the significance of the number 12?
God's people.
Yeah, this is the number of God's people. In fact, you're going to see this in the Old Testament where God is dealing with two daughters, if you remember. Israel and Judah are referred to him, and one of the analogies are like these two daughters that go astray from him. One, like Jairus' daughter, is dead. The other, like this woman, is bleeding out and is dying, is unclean, which is kind of like Israel and Samaria, Israel and Judah. Israel, as you know, is just dead. They're never faithful. They're cast off. They're scattered by the Assyrians. They become the lost tribes of Israel. Later on, become the Samaritans. And then Judah is like God still has his hand upon them, still preserves them, but they are cast out by the Babylonians, and they are for their wickedness, and they are unclean. And so you kind of have, maybe I'm stretching it a little bit here, but it's kind of interesting to have these two daughters, 12 years old, coming off of this mission to this Gentile guy. So it's like you have everything's kind of the whole world coming together here. But they are both in pathetic, and these two stories are similar because they both start off with people in noble positions. Jairus, and I think we can assume the woman has some wealth to her, who are completely humbled and broken to the point where they become beggars, and then they can be healed. In the story of the demon-possessed man, he's always been in this wretched condition, and he is brought out of the tombs to life again. So it's just kind of some interesting observations there. Let's finish up the story. We'll kind of call it from here. So 49 down to 56. What did we leave off here? Bob Powell, is it you?
Bob Powell, yeah.
Yeah, Bob Powell, you got that? 49 to 56?
While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any more." But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well." And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James, and the father and mother of the child. And all were weeping and mourning for her. But he said, "Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. And he directed that something should be given to her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened.
So I don't know if this reminds me a little bit of the Lazarus situation, where you have Jesus delaying. Someone is dying at the point of death, and Jesus kind of delays. In Lazarus, it's extreme. He delays like 2 more days. But here, it's like he does delay. There's an urgency to get to Jairus' house, and he insists on stopping and dealing with this woman and making sure that she is recognized and acknowledged. And so while he's speaking, he gets the news that Jairus gets the news that his daughter is dead. And what is he told since she's dead? And what?
Don't trouble him anymore.
Yeah, don't bother. His daughter has died, so don't bother. Don't trouble the teacher. Jesus responds to that.
Don't fear, only believe.
Yeah, don't fear. Only believe. And she will be well. All right, so they come to the house. They arrive at the house, and what happens at the house? So let's try to get the setting down here. So they arrive at the house. There's all kinds of people weeping and mourning for her. And so who goes into the house?
Peter, John, and James, and the father and mother.
Yep. So
Mhm.
Jesus,
Basically throws everybody else out.
Peter, John, and James, and the parents are allowed in. And everyone's weeping for her, and he says, don't weep. And he says something interesting. She is not dead. But what?
But sleeping.
Sleeping.
Sleeping. And of course, they laugh at him. They knew she was dead. But again, that's a strangely enough, that's is always a concern. In that day, if you remember back in those days, they would bury the same day that someone died. They would try to bury them as soon as possible. And oftentimes they buried people that were in comas or that they had certain conditions that they were still technically alive. They just appeared dead, and they would mistakenly bury people who were actually still alive. They know this child is dead, and they're thinking that Jesus is trying to play doctor here, that she's, she's just sleeping. We'll go wake her up, and you've made a mistake. And they laugh at him. So that's concerning. The crowds laugh at Jesus. And so what does he do then?
Takes the child by the hand and he says, child, arise.
Okay, Jesus takes the child by the hand and gives a command, and commands the dead, child, arise. Her spirit returns, and she gets up at once. And what does he do now?
Commands that she be brought something to eat and that they should
Yeah.
tell no one what happened.
Yeah, give her something to eat. And again, the parents were amazed. And he charged them to tell no one what happened. Why does he do that?
I don't know,
Because
because it's hard to hide the fact that,
Why doesn't he tell them? Why doesn't he? He told, if you remember, he told the Gentile guy,
yeah,
the demon-possessed guy, go tell everybody.
right.
But here, he says, don't tell anyone what happened.
Yeah, these are Jews, and they might try to make him king. There's a story that says that. There's another story that leads you to believe that perhaps he would be crucified before his time. He said, it's not my time yet.
Possible there too, yeah. In this story too, one thing you notice, what's the difference between the people here and the people that the demon-possessed man, the country people there. So the country people, the Gentiles, the pagans, what was their response to Christ?
Fear.
fear. And it's an awe and an appropriate fear. And in a sense, it's like he rewards that faith, that fear, with go tell everybody what God has done for you. He leaves behind this man, instructs them to tell him about what God has done for you. Here, what's the response of the crowds here?
Excitement.
Well, the amazement of the parents, but before that, what was the response of the crowds when Jesus arrives?
Or they laughed when he said she's only sleeping.
Yeah, they laughed at him. They did not have faith in him at all. They don't take him serious. They treat him as if he's just another guy. And he's like, no, they don't have that same awe and fear of Christ. And so it's one sense, it's like, you know what? To whom much, what does he say? Did he say it earlier with them? Be careful then. Let him who has ears to hear. It's almost like, take care then how you hear. For to the one who has, more will be given, and from the one who has not, even what he thinks he has will be taken away. I think this is a case of that, where they are not believing in him. They're not giving him their full attention. Everyone else is falling down before Christ. The demons are falling before him and begging him. Jairus is doing this. The woman is doing this. The disciples are doing this. Everyone is just falling before him. The parents are just, the crowds are laughing at him. They don't know who he is, but they have such a disrespect for him, even though I'm sure they know of Christ. They know what he's been doing. They've heard these things, but they don't have that fear of him. And so he's like, you know what? Don't tell anybody about what's happened here. I mean, let them think basically that she was asleep and I just woke her up.
That's interesting, because one of the judgments that God predicts for the Jewish people is that there will be a famine for the word of God.
Yeah.
You won't hear it. You don't want to hear it. Don't tell them.
Yeah, exactly right. And so, I mean, let's go through these stories again. All these stories kind of piling up on us here. So we had the calming of the storm. So look at all the things that Jesus commands. He commands the wind and the waves, and the disciples marvel and are afraid. He then commands the legion of demons, and the people are greatly seized with fear and beg him to leave. He then commands, well, a woman who he's healed, and she comes forward, trembling, afraid, bows before him, and he comforts her. Then commands even the dead, and the dead obey him. It's like, is there anything that he cannot command that he does not have power over? He's just laid out for us how many stories? 5 stories, 4 or 5 stories of Jesus' omnipotence over all the elements, all the things that terrify us, all the things that are beyond our control, that cause us the greatest fear, and shows himself a greater power, to be feared and to be loved and adored, because he uses that great power for our salvation.
You had made a point earlier, a couple of studies ago, when there was a demon-possessed guy in the synagogue. Remember that? And you had said, I thought it was interesting, that he has kind of banged his stake in the ground. It begins a series of stories where he shows the power over the forces of darkness.
Yeah.
One after another. He doesn't have to say, Father, do something.
Yeah.
One after another. He basically says, get lost to the demons of darkness.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other part too. All these things he does not as Moses would do them, pleading with God. He does them as God himself, as the Lord. He is the Lord. He commands. He doesn't ask God to do things for him. He does them as if he were God. But yeah, it's remarkable stories here. So one after another. And I also just want to stress the people that he's showing such tenderness and love toward are as outcast as you can possibly be. The brokenhearted, the desperate, the demon possessed man is just on the ultimate end of the spectrum of despair and hopelessness. And even the Jairus and the woman who would come from respectable are first broken and humbled, and they go through a process of great grief, bringing them to the point where they only Christ can help them, and he does. It's great stuff here. So, all right, we'll stop it here.